The best of 7 offers up a slightly different approach in the layout of the direction players want to go in this series. So we've seen quite a variety out of the Celestial players that have been covered so far in this tournament, and if you're missing out on the day 1 footage, I'm going to try and throw some of these games up on YouTube. I don't know if I'll get every game up there, but I'll definitely get some of the ones that were more exciting. Of course, there are VODs floating around Twitch as well if you want to catch those out. And I think I did hear that Aureil plans on casting all of these series at a later date on his own stream. So I'm sure that these games and the footage is going to be found somewhere on Twitch or YouTube, wherever you like to consume your favorite RTS content. But we saw a lot of aggressive play out of Celestial players. Of course, Aureil, very famous for one of the builds that's most relevant in the pool right now. The rush up to tier 3, getting that Arc Fortress out, and just kind of bum rushing your opponent, using lasers to take care of your opponent's information. And by information, I mean base. Rush, you need to update the stream title? Why? I can't keep changing the number, chat. I can't. I'm going to need a full-time person just to do that. Oh, very, very funny here. Snoxtar choosing an opportunity here to go for a very, very quick Greater Shrine. Now, Aureil has gotten 3 of these bases. His collection arrays here to kind of put himself in an aggressive position here. However, Snoxtar is going to challenge it. I believe the charge for a Sovereign's Watch that would allow him to be a little bit more defensive with these buildings, just unavailable at this current moment. Now, I know that he built an additional arc ship. Where did his arc ship go? I'm just trying to keep track of it all. And oh, okay, it just went back home. Got it. All right. So, there are 2 arc ships here. They do provide a decent amount of energy. Snoxtar is going to continue harassing this. This is just fortified enough. Good SimCity here by Aureil to kind of hold that position down. But now we're looking at a Celestial player that's got 4 collection arrays. I think the numbers haven't officially been run by me, but I think they've been run by other people. One of these collection arrays is equivalent to about 4 prisms mining a Luminite mine. So it's not an unsubstantial number. For sure. Okay, Snoxtar going to go try and steal these slimes, but then also gets a chance to see that this collection array is here, and Snoxtar is just going to kind of put pressure on every single structure right now. That's the best way when you know that your opponent has defensive lasers that can just be procced at any of these locations. I mean, well, just send a handful of units in every direction. That makes the most amount of sense to me. Meanwhile, on the opposite side of the map here, Snoxtar is working up to Spriggans here. He's going to get that Shadow Cleft. Twilight Spire is the air unit building for Infernals, but it isn't until you grab that Shadow Cleft that you can actually build Spriggans. That is a building requirement for very, very strong unit in the Infernal Arsenal. Excuse me. Got a bubble caught in the back of my throat. We're all good, though. So double Starforge here for Aureil. I mean, he's really just kind of abandoned this position in general. Utilizing that Sovereign's Watch here that does deal a temporary amount of damage to units that are in its vicinity. And it is a strong enough attack that, especially against Gaunts, these Gaunts don't stand very long against that collection array when it is charged up with a Sovereign's Watch. Now, Spriggans are going to be a bit of a different story here for Aureil to try and deal with. Argents do shoot up, sure, but without that photocapacitor's upgrade, those units do not stick around very long in that fight. Not to mention that Spriggans are going to be very good at collecting these camps, so all of a sudden, Aureil, utilizing some of his ability to be out on the map and kind of push forward with buildings, now suddenly has to contest with Spriggans that are going to be able to aggress against these camps in just a little bit bigger way. Now, Aureil is going to grab one of these cleavers, the smaller units of this camp, but they don't provide nearly as much resources as the Bruiser, which is what Snoxtar was able to pick off. So Aureil in a good position supply-wise right now, but Snoxtar slowly trying to catch back up, really focusing on trying to get that Spriggan technology up into play, because this should be able to prompt a decent response coming across the map here. I mean, gosh, Aureil has so many collection arrays, and now starting to work up on that prism count as well. That's just going to continue to advance his economy forward. And I think there's only going to be so much damage that can be dealt by this Sovereign's Watch before these Spriggans are able to just work away. Yeah, they do a significant amount of damage here. None of these buildings are classified as heavy. Oh wait, yes they are. That is incorrect. So these are great. These do bonus versus heavy. It's interesting because there are some units that do bonus versus structures, but structures also carry the heavy tag sometimes. There are some niche little things that we are trying to figure out in this game. All right, Cabal are going to be a good response here. Those are going to be able to bring Spriggan to the ground as the second Luminite Mine becomes exposed as the collection array does get picked off. Aureil does have the money to just immediately throw down an additional collection array, which I think is fine. But I don't think Snoxtar can afford to just rely on this damage alone. So what ends up becoming the path here for Snoxtar? Because Aureil has 123 supply, and one thing to consider with Celestials, this number is a little bit inflated because these larger arc stations, despite the fact that they are structures, do count as supply-bearing units. And I believe, if I remember correctly, the collection array is the same. There was a point where they removed that supply account, and then they kind of gave it back once again. So that number is a little bit inflated, but not by a lot. So the fact that Aureil does have a significant army supply, still worth keeping an eye on and still worth respecting if you are the Infernal player. But it is worth noting that that supply can quickly dwindle if this army goes in the favor of the Infernal player. But we are going to get a big engagement here. Sabers do get pulled forward. They are still going to be able to deal a decent amount of damage. Weavers are a good response to this, but in the most recent patch, they are a lot weaker, so they don't have the same staying power that they did previously. And these units are slowly starting to pull apart here for Snoxtar. More Weavers get brought into the fight, trying to grab those Sabers. The Sabers seem to be the exciting, most scary part of Aureil's army here, and they're just going to completely wipe out Snoxtar's defenses here. The Spriggans do get brought back here. Sabers can't fire up, but Cabal can bring them to the ground. As we can see, that one Spriggan is brought all the way down. It is disabled. The Weavers continuing to be brought in on the opposite side here. A few more units taking care of the front side of this army, and it seems as if the Argents now are not able to effectively deal with these Spriggans the way that they need to, and the final Saber does get picked off. Cabal are out of energy. There is no more pulls down to the earth for these Spriggans, so the Spriggans are basically allowed to run a little bit free, but Kree coming up here on the backside of this army push as well, creating just a little bit more DPS for Aureil, and Aureil's going to have to back off now. Take a look at this supply. This was such a scary fight for the Infernal player, but now all of a sudden, those supplies are almost dead even. Imagine if those Spriggan had been brought to the fight almost instantly. This might have been a different engagement for the Infernal player, but instead he is going to have a little bit of a pushback, does kind of swing army supply-wise in his favor, getting 78 to 59. And suddenly Aureil caught on the back foot here as a fourth base is going to go up for Snoxtar, trying to move to the north side of the map. His economy is actually in a pretty decent state. He does have tier 3. He does have that Elder Shrine. Do we have the upgrade? No, we don't have the Salivary Overflow upgrade yet for Spriggans, which basically makes their Binding Saliva, which is a debuff as you attack opponents. It just makes it like twice as strong, which is quite strong. But of course, both sides are utilizing debuffs. Cabal being the debuff unit for Aureil's army here. Good use of Purify here to keep those Argent's Cabals full of energy, that little Purify cloud, if you will. Removing debuffs every second for any army that stands inside of it, but also massively increases the energy regeneration. There's just nothing that shoots up right now. And Aureil is out of power here. He's at a -2 power supply, which means there are no Sovereign's Watch available. There's just no opportunity for these buildings to help protect themselves. Now, finally, Aureil gets a few more power banks on his side and is able to advance forward here. This is only an arc station, though. So right now, Aureil still stuck on tier 2 technology. I think Aureil was expecting to win with that push, but Snoxtar had other plans for his opponent at this point. So instead of being able to tap out his opponent at the 10-minute mark, suddenly now we're looking at 12:30. Armies are having to be chased across the map. We're starting to see vectors brought into play. I think that's actually a good response to a Spriggan army that is going to be light air units. Those vectors do bonus damage to light air. That is really, really important to remember. But again, those flying units are going to be so quick to move around the map. In terms of economy, Aureil sitting on 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, still has 4. Still a decent amount of collection arrays. But notice that not many prisms. There's no prism overlap with these collection arrays. If you're not familiar with the way that you can mine as a Celestial player, you can have a collection array and 4 prisms at the same time. It does deplete the mine a little bit faster. However, I mean, it gives you a significant amount of Luminite. So now Snoxtar utilizing the northbound bases here. This base actually not taken advantage of at all. That actually could be to Aureil's benefit here. It could just easily take a Morph Core and just kind of drop in on top there. But instead, Snoxtar going to rock 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bases total. Yeah, 155 supply. He's in a much better place. Does have a decent amount of Animus as well. Animus is the effective energy for the top bar for the Infernal player. A lot of different things that you can do with the Animus here. We do have Hellborn now with that Molten Touch that allows for that burning DPS after attacks here. Those Kree just don't stand a chance, but the thing that is useful, these Hellborn are very good against structures, and you know a thing or two about the Celestial player. Structures are what they are all about here. Weavers are going to come to the front line, pulling those Sabers forward, really punishing the Weavers, though, for getting themselves out of position, but it's all to buy time for these Hellborn. But the Hellborn are completely exposed now. All of the units were removed. The Spriggans get brought back to the earth. These Hellborn are going to try and stick around as long as possible, but they can't afford to be here forever. They will get taken care of and brought down. Another Hellborn gets removed from the game, and this is a very, very expensive fight for Snoxtar, who is seeing a little bit of weakness in Aureil's reinforcements here, as there isn't a whole lot, despite the fact that the main base, quote unquote, for Aureil is so close to the center here. 4 Sabers, though, are going to zip forward. They're going to use that mass accelerator to advance themselves quicker into battle, but that just gets them closer and closer to the Flayed Dragon. Phew! That Flayed Dragon is going to be able to do so much damage, and these Sabers just do not shoot up in any capacity. So now we are going to see a huge pushback from Snoxtar. Aureil is in trouble. There just is not that much back here. There's not enough energy as well for a Sovereign's Watch, so if Snoxtar pushes in here with his army, which it seems like he is poised to do so, this now becomes a very complicating situation where Aureil is unable to deal with this push, and it's actually -29. These 2 power banks that were out front, they were load bearing, and they are load bearing no more. The house is starting to crumble here. Snoxtar's actually going to back off. Oh, he just doesn't realize. He doesn't realize that he is double his opponent's supply at this point in the game. We're at the 16-minute mark, and it's very easy for the Celestial player to posture in such a way where they appear very strong and very well collected. But at this point, Aureil is just licking his wounds. He does have control of this speed camp, which is rather useful for these units that do need to zip around. But the supplies overall tell a much different story. Snoxtar continuing to expand his base count. He actually going to throw down some additional structures on top of it. But we've kind of reached that end game army of Hellborn and Spriggan and the Flayed Dragon to deal as much damage as it possibly can. And we're starting to see that the Hellborn is more and more the core end game unit composition, simply because it has become so versatile. It not only can attack ground, but in the most recent patch, it can now attack air units as well. And I imagine that that will probably see a little bit of adjusting, since the damage is the same for both. And I could see that going in a direction where that might need to be tuned just a little bit. Spriggans are going to do some devastating damage to the economy of Aureil here. Now we can start to see that binding saliva really taking shape, not allowing these prisms to escape. They're trapped. They're trapped with the Spriggan. Ethereum Purifier are going to try and defend for as long as possible, but it is, again, a very, very fleeting defense here, as Snoxtar is going to wrap around on the bottom side of the map as well with the main army. These vectors do trade a lot of damage with those Spriggans. That is very, very true. But once again, it's all about the distraction and the diversion away from that main army. The Flayed Dragon comes in with these Hellborn. Weavers added into the mix as well. It's a potpourri army for the Infernal player. Exactly what we've been trying to look for. No more mono battles. No more mono battles. We want some unit diversity. But it seems as if Aureil is going to start falling apart here. It's 233 to 131. This now should probably be the final engagement here. Blade Dragon is going to come on in. He does use his Plague Breath to coat this army in infestation, and as these units die, they are going to pop out 2 fiends at a time. The Hellborn just putting down so much DPS. There is not a whole lot that Aureil can really do here, as the supply for Aureil plummets into the ground. This is starting to look all but the GG call. And there it is, Aureil having to tap out of game number 1, and Snoxtar flexing a little bit of macro against the Celestial opponent. So this is one of the maps that saw a pretty significant rework in one of the most recent patches. So I think it was like a couple patches ago that this area was completely redesigned. We kind of saw a big shift in the flow of this map. It used to be that this was wide open, and you could either leave your base this direction to go to a double Luminite location, or you could head this direction to a more standard natural. And people were a little bit confused, like, okay, which one is the natural expand? Oh, this has 2 Luminite mines, and so that one's gotta be better, right? And, I mean, there are some players that benefit from utilizing the double Luminite mine, especially an Infernal player that can get into Brutes, which are predominantly just a Luminite heavy resource. Not the case here in game number 2. Snoxtar are going to get that Conclave first, but listening to a little bit of feedback from the community, the developers, making some big changes on this map, and I think Isle of Dread was kind of the feeling that most players would get when they saw this map originally. Now we're starting to see that this is a map that is pretty well received. Nothing too crazy. Nothing that people genuinely dislike about this map. So big shout out to Frost Giant for helping make this a fun developing idea. Good proof of concept, if anything else, on what some of these maps can look like in the Stormgate universe. Here we are at game number 2. We are getting a significant amount of Therium early on here. 4 on Therium mining is pretty significant. Now, granted, Snoxtar has decided to go Conclave first, so that means that it's going to be predominantly Therium units on the opening onset. We did also see in the previous game Snoxtar make that jump up to tier 2 tech, which in the most recent patch, the 0.1.3 patch, teching up for all factions was slightly reduced to encourage people to get to tier 2 just a little bit quicker. So seeing that on display is I mean, good. It's a nice way to see how the meta evolves and how the game changes and the people inside of the game change as well. Now we did see an additional arc ship get built here. Yeah, here's the original arc ship. Here is the second arc ship. Arc ship is very, very good at producing prisms, and not only that, morph cores. Morph cores are really good at quickly building structures anywhere on the map, and they can build them at a very, very quick rate. So you can see how quickly these two structures build just on their own. Give a morph core, it's significantly improved. But on top of that, these arc ships do provide 30 additional energy to the overall energy count. I think it's 30 or 15, one of the two. It's a significant amount. So Snoxtar is going to see that the fourth collection array has been dropped. Yeah, I was going to say that. It should prompt his own shrine at the natural expand. So he'll have access to a second Therium patch. Greater Shrine is completed and done. We are going to see that Twilight Spire almost instantaneously. Not very surprising. Brigands are rather strong against celestial units, especially if there are not a lot of size on the map. And at this point in the game, it's largely just Argents and Kree. And Kree don't shoot up at all, but Kree are going to deal a lot of damage on the ground if there are Gaunts. And especially in this game, I mean, this was a Gaunt-heavy army. Trying to figure out where those Gaunts ended up. Oh, here they are. Okay, we do have some Brutes into the mix as well. So both of our players playing rather aggressively here. Really, really moving forward on the map. Got this Arc Station. This is our tier 2 structure for the Celestials. Coming forward to this double Therium patch. It's very exposed, but it is rather useful for getting some of those advanced units. And I wouldn't even be surprised to see a quick jump up to tier 3. So we're going to stay on that Arc Station for just a little bit. Going and collecting the ooze camp here. The energy tower is going to be very, very impactful for the Celestials. There's so many units that utilize energy. Most importantly, the Argent. Now, are we getting the Argent upgrade? It doesn't look like it. So very, very interesting here to see that the unit that he has probably the largest amount of right now, which would increase the Argent's energy count from 30 to 50, is just not present in this current game state. Probably just saving some of that Therium and some of that research time for the Legion Hall, which will more than likely, spawn out some Archangels here. So we are going to get a tier 3 structure. The Arc Fortress is on the way. Kree is going to spot at the last second that fourth shrine of Snoxtar, and it is moving in the direction that Aureil is expanding as well. So depending on how the overall shift goes for our Celestial player, Aureil might just be expanding into his opponent, which is a very good thing for the Celestial player, having some really quick reinforcements and being able to get on top of the army. Now, those Gaunts, very, very exposed here. Kree are going to be incredibly strong against those Gaunts, especially when they are exposed. Good use of the Purify Nova. All of these Kree are going to be able to just get right on top of these Gaunts, and you can see they just shred through those squishy units. Suddenly, Snoxtar has to run away. These Brigands are not going to be good enough at repelling this army, especially with Cabal that have so much energy in their in their disposal. A Magmadon here would be helpful if it wasn't lifted up into the air. Now that Stomp is still available. It doesn't have the stun, but it is very strong against these units, but Cabal able to lift those up. Once again, we do have a second Magmadon coming in here. Stomp is going to be denied on both of those units. What good defense here from Aureil, utilizing his micro to keep these tanky units out of the line of fire of this ground army. And Aureil has enough here. I think he just pushes and wins. There is going to be a Shroud Stone manifested here. This is going to have 100% attack speed, but Aureil really doesn't need to attack in this specific location. He can just run right over to not only the most exposed base, but it also has some of the technology that he would love to remove from the map. Another Magmadon brought in and another Magmadon lifted up into the sky. And I think Snoxtar is on his final gasp here. These Kree are going to be able to get into this Luminite line, and this is a damage that is going to be very, very difficult to recover from. Spriggan are not going to be enough to recover this economy loss. And suddenly, if this is not dealt with, this is going to be a lost base. This is going to be lost tech. There will be no more Spriggan until Snoxtar is able to rebuild. And I just think that Aureil is completely down and out here. These Kree now running into the main base. The final level of protection here is gone. And suddenly Snoxtar on the run with all of these imps. These imps have to try and retreat, but I don't know where they're going to retreat to. There just is only a small amount of defenses over here with the production structures, and Aureil is just going to completely derail his opponent here in game number 2. Yeah, this is all over but the crying. And I think Snoxtar is going to have to rewind just a little bit and figure out what would be the best course of action here in game number 3. Getting just a little bit too economic and stretching himself out, playing just a little bit greedy, using a Purify top bar ability on these Cabal, just refreshing all of their energy. I would imagine the Greater Shrine is going to fall here. He's actually not even really thinking about it at this point. Oh, the reinforcements are just rolling through the final base here. Yeah, this is over. The Greater Shrine is going to fall here. There's no replacement Greater Shrine at this point. And this should be a very, very quick GG at this point, but Snoxtar doesn't want to tap out just yet. It's 96-33 though. The economy has been shattered here. Kree are going to roll on in. These units are going to be exposed as well. It's one Shroud Stone holding the weight of the infernal world here. Purify spell is rather strong. I will not disagree. Oh, that's just so much damage. I'm actually a little surprised that these Twilight Spires have not been targeted as of yet. I don't know what you are. I'm like, I don't know what you are attached to, but you are quite attached to it, that's for sure. Yeah, Aureil's all in on this, but, you know, Snoxtar's trying. Okay, there we finally tap out. GG is called. And in the bottom right, the red Infernal player playing for Aftermath Games. This is Snoxtar. And on the top left of Lost Hope, the blue Celestial player, this is Aureil. Cross spawns. We got ourselves some cross spawns on map number 3. Now, I do think that this is a unique situation for both players, because Lost Hope is kind of this big map. It's a 4-player spawn map, so you can spawn here, spawn here, spawn here, spawn here. Cool. All of that. All of the creep camp are towards the center, which I think is kind of neat. I do like Lost Hope. I know I have learned that this is apparently a controversial opinion in the Stormgate community. Maybe some of my infernal bias is showing. Like, that's fair. I'm willing to own that. Lost Hope is the worst map ever. I don't know. I think it's okay. I just think there's a lot to offer. Also, look at all these Therium patches. You're telling me a place with this much Therium is so bad? I don't know, man. Also, what's up, Elf? Glad to see you. Okay, so Aureil going to immediately kind of tackle some additional economy here, leaping into what would be the backdoor third, or this spawn location. So this actually could go relatively unscouted for a decent amount of time, depending on how Snoxtar wants to navigate the map. One of the things that Infernal players do like to do on this map is get out very, very quickly with units and take as many of these camps as possible. It just works out very well in the Infernals opening. So we are seeing some good motion out of Snoxtar to try and claim some of these camps, not only to grab their resources, but also the buffs as well. There is a lot of Infernal build orders that kind of work around the idea of, okay, I'm going to get early production structure, and I'm going to get that Conclave early, or going to get an Iron Vault early. And then try to utilize that early energy to get out on the map, kill these camps, and with the money I get from these camps, build my next structure. So grabbing that shrine, grabbing additional production structures, getting tech structures. That seems to be a logical idea, especially on this map where easy access to these camps is pretty readily available. We've not seen Miasma at all out of Infernal players, but I think right now Miasma is not a super relevant ability. I think it needs a little bit of fine tuning. I think one of the issues, and we're seeing this with the Dark Prophecy as well, my perspective, and feel free to correct me in the chat if you think I'm wrong, but one of the things that can be done with both of those units is Hexen and Animancers can be interrupted rather easily by all three factions. So a thing that, and since you can be interrupted and lose all of that energy, and it has a cooldown, I think it does make it very difficult to utilize that skill effectively. I wonder if there's a way to make units that are in that channel, make them uninterruptible, if that would make a difference or not. Not make them unkillable, but just make them so they can't be interrupted. Could be an interesting way to maneuver that. We have seen some Animancers get used in slightly different ways, because the Animancer does have different skills that, or spells that you can use. The Hexen, though, is a little bit more limited in that regard. I know recently the last patch improved Venom Traps, and Venom Traps seem to be the direction that balance people would like Infernals to go, but to this point we haven't seen a ton of use out of Venom Traps. All right, so Greater Shrine here for Snoxtar. Snoxtar does have 3 bases. He is working on his 4th. Both players just kind of slowly winding up here. This map is big enough that it's really not a major deal for either player to kind of settle in, go for a little bit longer form macro map. We do have that Arc Station coming up into an Arc Fortress, and it is in a bit of a position to try and float in. So one of the reasons that Aureil is so famous in the Celestial community right now is his Jesus House build, where this Arc Station turns into an Arc Fortress rather early and just floats across the map and just lasers down the valuable structures of Infernal players. And one of the things that is interesting about the Infernal is that buildings cannot be repaired or healed. They're just, wherever they're at, they're there. All right, yep, Arc Fortress is going on a mission here. and it is going to find that greater shrine. So we are going to have to take an eye, or take a look at that, keep an eye on the horizon here, as Snoxtar has, I think with these fiends, did find this shifting in the sky, but I don't know if he was focused on it. I think he was just looking for collection arrays at this point, and that might have pulled his attention in a different direction. So Snoxtar is going to do a little bit of scouting. Once again, just keeping an eye on that Luminite mine count. We are looking at Cabal. We are looking at Argents. It's the primary unit composition here for the Celestial player. But getting out into the center is going to be really important. Again, Aureil now with this Arc Fortress is going to want to start drawing attention away as much as possible. Oh, we actually might just post up here, not realizing that this fourth base has been taken. Now takes a look at it and might actually start lasering down this base. Oh my gosh, it's just kind of looming here. It's so big. So close to the camera. All right, oh, yep, there we go. Shrine number 1 under assault. Power banks do need to be built into this mix to try and keep this energy count high enough. But as this first base does go down, so too does the attack begin here. Ooh, big Magmadon shots here into the main army. Oh my gosh, look at how low it brought all of these units down. And with 3 Hellborn, this is actually a very scary position here. These Hellborn could easily target into the Argents and suddenly cause immense trouble here for Aureil, who is losing his Kree frontline here. There's only a couple of Kree left. This Arc Fortress is being harassed here by Spriggan. This is going to be kind of an all-in effort to knock down the remainder of this structure tech. Elder Shrine is going to be harassed, but I just don't think there's going to be enough DPS here. Yeah, this Arc Fortress is going to completely fall apart. That is going to go down. That will leave Aureil with a vast deficit of energy here, left with 1 in total, unable to break the front wall as well. Snoxtar's got to be feeling incredibly good about this defense. Being able to hold on to this Elder Shrine while your opponent loses their own tier 3 structure is incredibly good. Now Aureil is going to have to respond with an Arc ship just to get that energy back up and running. Because with that energy low, that means there's no top bar abilities, there's no Purify Nova, there's no Sovereign's Watch. I guess we get 1 Sovereign's Watch. All right, prove me wrong. You can go into the deficit. But that's it. No more until this is done. Once that Arc ship is completed, then we should be in a better energy place for Aureil. But this is still a rather weak spot here. Snoxtar is going to pick up his 4th base once again. I wouldn't be surprised to see him come out. Yeah, he's actually going to drop a shrine here into this little nook, getting access to 3 of these Therium patches. Very, very large resource to take advantage of. I'm a bit surprised that we haven't seen Snoxtar kind of come up here into the top right or the lower left, because these bases are just open. They're open for the taking. And with the way that Aureil has been playing, I mean, there wouldn't be a whole lot of scouting opportunity to take a peek up there. So much of what Aureil wants to do is either going to be at the front door or just literally like knocking down structures deep in the heart of Snoxtar's base. Okay, Spriggans do have to respect the Cabal. The Cabal can still do a decent amount of gravity flux damage here. What do we are at for the Hellborn count? What are we at? 6? 6 is a strong number here. There just needs to be a front line. If there's a front line to body block for these Hellborn, the Hellborn end up being just fine. We are seeing a rather large Starforge transition coming out of Aureil, so we should probably start seeing some sabers. Yep, there we go. Got 2 sabers on the way. More than likely, we'll see 2 more once the economy is able to sustain it. Grabbing another Luminite mine as well. We do have another Arc Fortress, so we're back at tier 3 once again. Do we have the tier 3 Kree upgrade? Yes. Yes, we do. The Radiant Fury is a tier 3 upgrade for those Kree. Usually when Kree are eliminated, they stand still for about 2 to 3 seconds, and then they explode and do just a little AoE damage around their death animation. However, when you get Radiant Fury, it not only improves the damage dealt by 20, but it allows the Kree to move while they are in that fatal countdown. Very, very useful, especially with these Kree, if they can deal damage and then just kind of run right into the heart of, I mean, if there are imps nearby, if there are gaunts that are still able to be killed, all of that can be incredibly useful. Brigand trying to harass this base are successful. Aureil's just kind of knocking down walls at this point. I don't think that he really cares so much that natural barriers continue to exist. I think he wants the ability to be able to move anywhere he needs to move on the map at any given time. Now, we do need to keep an eye. Where is that Arc Fortress? There it is. Okay, where are you queued up to? Yeah, coming over here. We now see Snoxtar starting to take these additional bases, starting to expand on the right-hand side of the map. And I mean, at this point, I think we just need to buckle in. We've got a long, drawn-out game coming down the pipe here. Now, that could change if Aureil goes a bit too far forward here. This army is strong, but there's so much ground to cover here against Snoxtar, who has such a beautiful concave on these units. Now you can see those Kree taking lethal damage, and they can continue to move around, but that is not going the way that Aureil planned here. Snoxtar just has too much covering for these Hellborn that are able to start moving forward here. These Hellborn are going to trade relatively well against those Sabers in the Cabal. But ideally, there still needs to be a front line army. Is the Dragon going to be enough to deal with that? The Dragon is always a surprise when it flies on in. Yes, the Dragon is going to be enough here to deal some pretty substantial damage, especially dropping that plague breath on top of those units. You can see the fiends just multiply as Aureil has to tap out in game number 3. Snoxtar with an overwhelming push in the center. All right, so one of the interesting components here is we have seen some pretty unique builds out of both of our players. And it appears that we might get the same in game number 4 here from Aureil. Now, Aureil is known for being quite the cheeky player, for sure. Oh my gosh. He hides the morph cores off to the right-hand side, letting Snoxtar see what is living in Aureil's base, and the reality is it's nothing. There's nothing at home. But Snoxtar is in a good position here, going for a rather safe opening, getting an Iron Vault Conclave. This is actually one of the most common safe openings for Infernal players at this point. Utilizing a little bit of the brutes, utilizing some gaunts, all good stuff. But I can't help but keep an eye on the Morph Core rush that is moving across the map here. So if you are Snoxtar, what do you have going on? He's going out to the Luminite Tower in the center of the map. This is such a bold play here. Now, this is going to be a moment where Aureil is working on getting this speed tower. The speed tower is going to make these morph cores and arc ship just a little bit faster here. But once this pops up, this is now evident out on the map here. Snoxtar knows where Aureil is because there's only one possibility for Aureil to clear this camp, and that means that morph cores are moving. So what's Snoxtar's response going to be? He just cuts right through to the opposite speed tower. He wants to eliminate the mining that is happening for Aureil. Aureil doesn't have a whole lot of resources at his disposal here, and eventually I think these morph cores are going to want to become structures rather than just being units, so we're going to have to see how this shakes up here. Aureil does have a significant amount of damage here. There is no greater shrine, so we aren't going to see any manifested shroud stone at any point in the game, but the only collection array for Aureil is gone. 230 Luminite is all that remains at this point here. There is a prism working out some Therium kind of towards the top portion, but yeah, Aureil is a little bit at a loss for words here. He doesn't know exactly what to do. He's going to find these shroud stones though. This is a great catch here. Killing these shroud stones off would be so important, but can they even do enough DPS? Not really. Oh no. This is going to be, I think, a shutdown here for Snoxtar. Aureil can't deal enough damage, and these Shroud Stones are just going to chew away. Oh, even saving one of them. It's such good discipline out of Snoxtar here, but both players are kind of caught in the lurch. Now, Aureil does have that one lonely prism in the top of the map, just doing a lion's share of damage, economic damage for Aureil, allowing him to get a collection array at this point. What a swing for the Celestial player, who still has all of the morph cores that he needs to be successful here. But the only thing Snoxtar has going for him is that he does have enough DPS to take down these camps, but this is just going to quickly become a complicating situation here, as Sovereign's Watch is going to be used on the shrine. This is a very weird interaction here. Both of these players, it's like the Mongol Empire in Age of Empires 4. They have no home base. They just go where the wind takes them. And right now, both of these players are true nomads, living wherever they can on the map. Now, this ended up working out really well in Snoxtar's favor, being able to use this meat farm to help take down this camp in the center, because being able to control this Luminite tower does provide a bit of income. What really is more of a complicating factor is the fact that Snoxtar is only now getting an additional shrine up to help work on some economic stability. But this is such a goofy game right now. Let's see, does Aureil have enough energy for another Sovereign's Watch? I think he might. Now, does Snoxtar have enough DPS here? He might. Do we have Plague Axes? No Plague Axes, but being able to pick off these Morph Core are so valuable. This Sovereign's Watch actually not targeting any of these Gaunts. That could potentially be a mistake here, but he definitely wants that shrine to go down, because he knows that with that shrine lost, that comes a terrible amount of damage. But this base hasn't been mining for a couple of minutes now, so I feel like it's Aureil being maybe a little bit blind to the situation here, as, okay, there is enough energy and another charge for a Sovereign's Watch. So that is going to back off Snoxtar for a brief amount of time more. This Ritual Chamber will go down. That's not a terrible amount of damage. It is going to restrict the tech path into Plague Axes, but right now, I mean, there's no Therium mining happening anyways. So not a crazy deal. Oh, Aureil has enough money. He's going to be able to rebuild his main base. This prism in the top left has done so much work. This is the MVP of the game right there. Now these units and this building are going to get floated into the top corner. This is going to provide a little bit of difficulty. Oh, actually snapping one of those morph cores with the Skull of Shetta. Very, very good use of the Hex in here. But what kind of game state are we back in? And we're just in kind of a weird position. I mean, I guess theoretically, there are no additional... Well, let's see. I got to try and track down all the buildings. Yep, these fiends are going to try and float around, try and locate what may or may not be happening on the map. This base is going to get resituated once again. There are no additional Gaunts on the production tab, simply because there is no Conclave on the map right now. But I think that will be temporary. Snoxtar just working on getting an imp count going right now. Collection Array could benefit from landing onto the base once again. This Prism finally getting bullied off of that Luminite mine in the top left-hand corner. What a hero. Aureil is in a bit of trouble, though. He needs to be able to situate himself, and only now is going to start building 2 creation chambers back at home. I think this collection array could have enough to hold its own, especially against this army that is largely fiends. The fiends are very, very strong. I mean, oh, Aureil doesn't have energy. Oh, that's a big problem. I was going to say he's just going to use a Sovereign's Watch, right? No, there is no Sovereign's Watch available. There's no energy. Only now are we starting to see some additional power banks being brought in to the map, and that is going to limit the amount of protection that can happen. Oh, I think, oh, he uses the wrong one. Oh, man, this is a problem. Yeah, this is the base that you really needed to protect, Aureil. That was not the destination. That was the journey, my friend. And I think this journey is going to quickly come to an end here. You will be able to harass this, but this is the final collection array in this game. It's being forced to be lifted up. Aureil now has no mining because this prism still bullied into the top left-hand corner, and Snoxtar dealing with the unbeatable. And in the top right, his opponent, one win away from advancing to the grand finals of the Aureil Stormgate Tournament Invitational number 1. For Aftermath Games, this is Snoxtar. All right, we're on Secluded Grove. Secluded Grove does have this little base in the middle, instantly cut through by this imp that made a meat farm. So very, very good use of workers here in the early onsets of the game. And in fact, we've seen all three factions utilize the ability to cut down trees in vastly different ways. We've seen Celestial players using morph cores to, and this has actually been kind of creative with the different Legion Hall rushes that we've seen. They actually can find like groups of trees like this and just boop, 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 and just kind of cut a little hole out in the trees, and then it'll drop a structure. It's a very interesting play. I know there's a lot of people that are like, but Rashi, that makes the game not fun. Yeah, well, I mean, but it's a concept, right? An idea. How do we find the way to make it fun? I think that's the important part. But we've also seen units come out and cut a hole open into this area so that way you can keep an eye on it and you can just like drop units in and out just to make sure that it's not being taken in secret. We've seen different proxies come into the play. I mean, right here we're utilizing a Sovereign's Watch to clear a camp. All very unique, interesting strategies to try and give yourself an edge over your opponent. So, gotta love the innovation. Gotta love the innovation. Okay, Aureil kind of going back into his macro sense here, trying to get 4 of these collection arrays out right away. Oh my gosh, he's gonna find just the one slime. Well, that's actually gonna be an easy steal, I think. Ooh, not if Sovereign's Watch has anything to say about it. There are going to be Argents on the production tab as well. Gosh, that reaches so far. But being able to get this health tower very, very strong for Snoxtar, who's going to be able to get some pretty decent regen here. You can see that ticks back while inside of the radius in quite a significant way. Now, Aureil is going to need to spend a little bit of time out here trying to secure his forward base location. And that's one of the things that is unique about the Celestials is they can kind of just post up wherever they would like to. Once a building is down, it has a little cascade field. We can't see it on the observer map, but it has a little radius where you can build other buildings inside of it. You don't have to have a specific unit present to build those buildings. So very similar to Protoss in StarCraft 2. Just don't have to have a probe go and make that building. Imagine if you could just throw the building down. That's how it works for the Celestial players. As long as there's a field, there's build potential. All right, so we're getting some additional production here. Arc ship is going to start building up to an arc station. Now, one of the things that does modify as you build an arc station, it does provide 20 additional power. So not only are you teching up, but you are also making yourself just a little bit stronger in the energy category. A little bit of risk, little bit of reward. Especially for Aureil, who likes to use his arc stations and his arc fortresses as aggressive structures rather than just home bases. Now, Snoxtar is going to take a third base here. This is kind of what I was talking about earlier in the series, where Snoxtar plays a little bit closer to his chest and makes sure that he doesn't get too far out in front of himself. Doesn't want to miss out on an opportunity to defend when Aureil might do a big timing push. He's going to get a Twilight Spire as well, wants to get Spriggans back in the game once again. We'll have more Gaunts in this army this time around. We do have Plague Axes being researched, allowing his Gaunts to be able to infest units throughout the map. It's going to be triple Starforge. Are we just going to go straight into Saber production? Or is this going to be... I mean, I would almost love to see Vectors here, because you know your opponent has felt really comfortable going into the Spriggan production. And for the Celestial player, having those Vectors, really useful in dealing with Spriggans. But it is going to be Sabers. Yeah, you can never have just one Starforge. It's true. Very true. Now, the Collection Array has been discovered here, has been harassed as well. So, Collection Array did lift up. It is now kind of setting itself back down in order to mine once more. So, Snoxtar now is going to spend a decent amount of time kind of harassing the center in an attempt to keep his opponent from blooming too fast here. Because what? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Collection Array production here. We do have 3 Therium workers out towards the center. But that's not an overwhelming amount of Therium. I mean, you can see that Snoxtar has a significant bank of Therium. What could he be investing that into? I think he's saving it. Yeah, he's saving it for Spriggans. But Spriggans are actually surprisingly Therium efficient. They cost 100 Luminite and 50 Therium. So for the fact that they are flying units, I mean, really quite useful and efficient. Now, here we go. We have not seen many Shroud Stones in this tournament yet, but this Wraith Stone is incredibly impactful here. Now, this Wraith Stone does not deal individual damage to units, but it will inflict a slow to any units that come inside of its radius here. So Snoxtar Aureil has to respect this Wraith Stone, and you can see that he does try to attack it right away, but this is a bit of a premature attack here by Snoxtar. He doesn't really have the positioning here, and suddenly with this Wraith Stone getting bullied down by these Sabers, this is now a very weak position. Oh my goodness, Aureil just absolutely catching Snoxtar off balance here. What a massive supply lead. 132 to 58. Oh, this is over. You're going to have to get out of this game, Snoxtar. You can't recover from this. What a rough position for Snoxtar to get caught in. This is exactly what Aureil wanted to do, though. Just have a moment where he can peek with 4 to 5 of these Sabers and just push his opponent down. Yeah, Snoxtar's going to have to back out. He's got another couple of games to win this series. He's 1 win away from advancing on and becoming our first grand finalist for this bracket. Can he do it on this map? It is Snoxtar, the Aftermath Games. And in the lower left, in a pretty advantageous spawn position, all things considered, it's our blue Celestial player. Still needs to win 2. This is Aureil. Ooh. Very interesting. Oh, okay. It's going to be Iron Conclave. Iron Vault Conclave just separated. Got it. I was like, wait a minute. We're just going to do Iron Vault? That could be a mistake. Yes, this is match point for Snoxtar. Snoxtar just needs to win 1. And he advances onward. Bum 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 buddy. Okay, Snoxtar does get a good scout off on his opponent here. Wanted to try and clear this camp, but this is actually now going to be a good contesting point for both of our players. I always hydrate between games. You have to, man. When you're casting like this, gotta keep the throat lubricated. Those muscles work so much better. Oh my gosh, Snoxtar is just gonna be able to jump on top. Oh, this is actually an unfortunate position here, utilizing the Sovereign's Watch on the building that was just gonna crumble to the ground, and suddenly this is a very, very weak position here for Aureil, who is starting to invest his economy and his production into this spot. He's negative energy as well. The power banks have been destroyed. This collection array is going to be exposed. This arc ship is desperately trying to build a morph core, but Aureil has to evacuate. Yeah, this is a rough position here. Snoxtar actually is going to be able to capitalize on this moment. At the last second, pops a Sovereign's Watch here. That's going to be 15 seconds worth of cover, but a bit of a rough start here for Aureil. Snoxtar should feel pretty good about the amount of damage he's been able to place down, but this collection array is still alive. So if he's able to pick that off, he's going to try and get in there with a remaining amount of gaunts. That does get picked up and it gets canceled actually. So no benefits available at this point. Are there enough gaunts here? One of the gaunts does go down. This DPS is very fragile. Yeah, immediately drop into the ground to create a creation chamber. That's probably the smartest way to play that, but this really does need more units, and Snoxtar is on one base right now. He's all in on this idea. He brings a couple of the brutes over to the main base as well, going to try and harass in a couple of different locations. There is no production yet over in the main base. There is one creation chamber. And with the way that the prime structures work, I mean, he can rally units to both locations and be just fine, but he has to get this collection array down, and he's not going to be able to rescue it. That collection array is going to fall. I think Aureil is going to have a difficult time trying to get out of this situation here, losing his power banks into the main base as well. He's in such a power deficit at this point. Oh, tapping out. GG is called, and Snoxtar advancing onward to our grand final.